I'd like to spend the next few minutes with you talking about mistakes that I've made while serving producers and ranchers and the agribusiness people in the state of Oklahoma over the last 35 years. Mistakes that I've used to hopefully improve my programs, to make my workshops and my meetings better, to improve my communication skills, to improve my ability to build relationships with the people of Oklahoma and the surrounding areas. Well, let's start back at the beginning. As a dairy and farm boy with a new PhD, I set out to educate producers to hopefully help them improve their bottom line, help them improve their profit by using risk management and marketing tools to make more money. In the meetings and the workshops, I noticed that attendance was good. I noticed that participants paid attention, they took notes, they asked good questions. I also observed that after the meeting, some of them would try the tools. Some of them would do some things that I suggested. But over time, they tended to all go back to the marketing and risk management techniques they'd used before I came to town riding my white horse. Observant soul that I was, I said, one of us is wrong here, just to put it bluntly. And so I conducted research. And my research showed that the producers were already doing a relatively good job of selling and marketing their commodities and using risk management tools. They were mostly right in what they were doing. So my first deal is learn from your stakeholders. I would conduct workshops. We had a 12-hour risk management marketing management workshop, and I'd start that workshop with about a 5 to 10 minute diatribe of what the producers were doing wrong. I start out with saying few producers have a plan or strategy on how to market their product. And those that have a plan or strategy, few of them have it written down. I say few people, few of you know what marketing tools and risk management tools are available to you. Most of you don't understand how to use a forward contract or a futures contract or an option contract. And I wanted to set the stage to let them know where they were, where I thought they were, and what they needed to do to improve their marketing skills and to obtain a higher price. But I learned from that mistake. I learned that you've got to know where your audience is, that they do have knowledge, that they do have skills, that they are doing some things right. And after you learn what they're doing right, the skills that they have, you've got to recognize, let them know that you know that they have knowledge and skills to use. Then you can share with your audience what you've learned from them. In my programs, I often tell producers, most of the material that I am sharing today, I have learned from successful producers. And that's a true statement. The research that we conducted to see if producers were doing a good job, a relatively good job of marketing or selling their grain or their cattle or whatever, showed that over 80% of them were doing an outstanding job of selling their product. And when I started sharing that with the producers in Oklahoma, they started listening to me. So what you've got to do is you've got to make your audience comfortable with themselves. And when you make them comfortable with themselves, it makes them comfortable with you. And at that point, when they're feeling good about themselves, they're more likely to listen to you, and they're more likely to be willing to tweak, to make minor changes, or maybe even some big changes in what they're doing in order to increase their bottom line. Dr. Wade Borson, an ag economist on the faculty at OSU, asked me once what I taught producers on marketing, and I told him, and he kind of looked funny, and he asked me again, and asked the same question a different way, and I told him the same answer in a different way. He asked me a third time, and I told him a third time, and he looked at me and he said, "Kim, all you're doing is making those farmers feel good. And I said, you're right. You're absolutely correct, Wade, because once they feel good about themselves, then they're ready to build on the skill base and the knowledge base that they have. What you want to do is you want to impress your audience. You want to impress others with their knowledge, not yours. You've got to know your audience. I've been in Oklahoma for a couple years when I was asked to be the speaker at the District Oklahoma Grain and Feed Association meetings. Now there's 4 of these meetings at that time. They met in Enid, in Weatherford, in Woodward, and in Alva. The program for the meeting was an open bar, beer and adult beverages, a steak dinner, a presentation, and then an open bar and discussion. I looked at that and I said, well, this audience, they don't want a 30, 45-minute presentation they'd asked me to speak about on-farm storage cost. They're wanting a justification for the adult beverages and visiting among themselves. So I came to the meeting prepared with a short presentation on on-farm storage cost, but mostly I came with jokes and cowboy stories. About halfway through that presentation, Joe Hampton, that's Joe Neal Hampton's dad. He was manager of Pillsbury Mills in Enid. He looks up at me and laughs and he says, son, you're not going to make it in this business. And what I learned that night is that they wanted more meat than just the meal. They wanted an in-depth presentation on farm storage cost. That night, when I got back in Stillwater, I dropped by the office, made some notes. I went early next morning, I came in and I completely redid that presentation. And when I showed up at Weatherford the next night, I had some meat in my presentation. You've got to know your audience. You can't be too familiar, and it's very easy to do. You're not BFF with your audience, whether it be local farmers or whether it be, in this case, I want to visit with you about first is Southeast Area Extension In-Service meeting. Ron Sharp was at the meeting. Ron Vick was there. Ron was my 4-H agent when I was growing up in Muskogee County. Ron had been out to our farm duck hunting, quail hunting, dove hunting, rabbit hunting. Ron had known me since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and I'd known him for a long time. He'd known me for a while since I'd been in Extension. Ron Vick had been a 4-H agent in another area of southeastern Oklahoma, and I knew him when I was in 4-H, and I knew him when I was in Extension. I felt like I was friends with them, and they were giving me a hard time. And of course, I'm young, and I'm a new state specialist. They're giving me a hard time, and Ron Sharp says, Kim, I hope you're going to keep this simple. And I looked at him and I smiled and I said, Ron, I've got this so easy that a county agent can understand it. And it got quiet in that room. You might as well have been storing dry ice in that room, massive amounts of it, because everything just froze up. Those county directors, agents, educators, whatever you want to call them, were furious that a young state specialist would come out and insult them like that. I felt, especially with Ron Sharp and Ron Vick, that it was just joking among friends. I was an acquaintance with the other county educators. I recognized that I had screwed up. I apologized, but they were ready to get up and leave. And so I said, I think it's time to take a break. And I left the room and let Ron solve the problem for me. I came back in after a while. They were all still there. We had a good workshop, but there was always that tension there because I felt too familiar with the county educators. You can be that same way with your farmers or your ranchers or your agribusiness people. You can fish with them, hunt with them, play golf with them, be friends with them, but you're not one of them. There's a fine line there, and you got to be careful, very careful, not to cross it. You got to be prepared for everything. It's the Southwest District area in service with county educators again. And I had everything prepared, except I had ignored one important requirement. I was up there, I'm making my presentation. It was all going well until into the presentation, about halfway. Let's say I needed to go to the potty. And I kept presenting, I kept working, but those county educators, I think they recognized my problem, because when I finished, I said, "Are there any questions?" Normally there's a question or two, maybe, but there's not very many questions. They were full of questions, and they were asking questions with smiles on their face. And I'm prancing back and forth up there on that stage area, or whatever you want to call it, up front. Finally, I just had to say, "Guys, I've got to call a stop to this. I've got some business to take care of." And as I left the room in a hurry, they were all laughing and feeling relatively good about themselves. It's important that you pay attention to details. Before I give every presentation, before I started this videotape, I visit the men's room, I make sure I'm zipped up, and I make sure that everything is ready with the presentation, that I'm prepared and everything before I ever get up to that podium. You gotta pay attention to detail. You don't want to do something alone. I have a tendency to do that. I'm task oriented. I want it done. I want it done right. And let's just be truthful. I want it done my way. That's the hard way to do things. You need mentors. You need people that you can ask for help. In my development, John Holt, he was a professor at University of Florida, spent a year in Oklahoma State on a sabbatical. John helped me. He helped me plan. He helped me know how to prepare for presentations. After one presentation, he says, "Kim, you're good, and you're going to be really good, but you've got to learn pronunciation. You've got to learn to pronounce your words correctly." And then John Eichert. I came to Oklahoma from University of Kentucky. John was the livestock marketing specialist. We'd go to meetings. John would do the first presentation. I'd do the second. And I don't know how many times I walked up to give my presentation when a farmer would say, "Kim, let's see you follow that." John had the ability to connect with his audience. He had them in the palm of his hand. And I'd follow John. But John made me work, and I used John as an example. And John would give me suggestions on how to be better. And John gave me a target to shoot for. We did a professional meeting at the Southern Ag Econ Association, and John and I were on the program, and I had the presentation in front of his. And when I finished, another person in the audience said, "John, let's see you follow that one." And I felt like I had arrived, but it was because John had helped me get there. Wilmer Browning at the University of Kentucky, when I was there, he came in my office and he says, "Now, Kim, records are important. You've got to keep records of what you do. And once a year, we have to fill out the rainbow forms." And that's 5-colored form. It's our annual appraisal form, our annual report form, or whatever you want to call it. He says, "Kim, mark 2 full days on your calendar. Don't let anything else be on those days, and spend those 2 days filling out the rainbow form, filling out your report, because that's the only way the administrators have to know what you are doing and how to evaluate you personally. It's got to be done right. It's not fun. It takes time. It takes organization. but it's something that has to be done. Gene Nelson at Oregon State University, Roy Black from Michigan State University, working with regional and this happen to be national projects. How to work as a team in putting together educational programs. Gus Page was the agribusiness specialist when I got to Oklahoma State University, and I worked with Gus as we worked with elevators, and I worked with them with merchandising. People would ask Gus if he had what his education was, and he'd say, I just had a master's. But Gus had a master's degree, but he had a PhD in relationships. He had a PhD in how to work with agribusiness people, to understand them, to get them to share their problems, to get them to help them to solve problems. Gus was an excellent, excellent mentor. He taught me that it's important to take time to go out and play golf, to fish, to hunt, to do things outside the office. And that's where you, one, build relationship, but that's also where you learn what's going on in the industry. You need to use other people's work, and it's okay to do it as long as you don't claim credit for it. And I will admit that I have used people's work and said, thus and so did this. I'll let them know I'm using it, but I don't always say research by or whatever. Yeah, I'm guilty of that, but it's okay to do that. Terry Castens Kevin Dubitter did some great work at Kansas State University, and I've used that throughout my career, and they've updated it, and I've used the updates. I did a presentation in Arkansas City, and I was up there, and Dr. Terry Castens was there, and I was using his material, and that was okay. It's good stuff. Scott Irwin and Daryl Good, AgMass from the University of Illinois. You might want to look up AgMass. They have some excellent, excellent research on predicting prices, on marketing strategies and marketing plans. It's good material, and I've used it a lot. Carl Zuloff, early in my career, we did a professional meeting together on the program. And Carl, I did a deal on efficient markets, and I've used that material throughout my career. Wade Borson at Oklahoma State University, his research stuff I've used. You work with the extension personnel. I worked with Bill Tierney at Kansas State University, John Eichert at OSU, Darrell Pill. I still work with Darrell, Phil Kinkle, Jeff Edwards, who's now the department head there. Share programs. It's synergism. It makes you can build stronger and accomplish more with teams and working with others. What I haven't listed on here is working with the county educators. That's the front line. That's the people that organize the meetings. That's the people that work directly with our stakeholders. And the county educators, the area specialists, they've got knowledge and information that the area agronomists, plant and soil scientists, on what's the crop look like, what do farmers do on soil fertility, on seed use. Gary Strickland, you can just work with them. You build a relationship with them. You want to provide something that the audience can use today. I talked about going out and doing workshops, and you present and educate, and it's material and it's things that an audience or the participants can use over time and implement over time. But you really want to provide them something that they can use today, because you'll do the long-term stuff, the short-term stuff, the educational, the thought-provoking things. But they need at least one piece of knowledge or skill that they can use immediately. That way, when they're sitting there listening to you, or when they walk out of that meeting that day, they're thinking about how they can utilize that skill or that knowledge right now that you provided them. That's something that's extremely important. And I found out that it increases your credibility. it brings them back. When you come back out, or if you're doing a program, they're more likely to go listen to you because they know you're going to give them something they can use right now. Now, do they want the long-term stuff, the short-term stuff, the educational stuff, the thought-provoking stuff? You bet they do. But early on in my career, I didn't provide that one piece. There was something missing when they left my programs. And that deal that was missing was that one piece of knowledge or skill that I can use right now. And to do that, you've got to know your audience. You've got to know what they're doing. You've got to understand their farm or their ranch or their business, their objectives. You've got to know them. You've got to be a consultant to them and seen as a consultant. Oh, working within the system. Oh, cooperative extension is it's an excellent system. A lot of good work's been done in this. But you've got to understand how the flow of information works. You've got to understand the responsibility of each individual. You've got to understand where the power is. And you've got to work within that. When you do your monthly report or your annual reports, you got to, that just seems like a painful, worthless thing to do, but you've got to understand who's using it and why they're using it and why they demand it. Back 15 or so years ago, there was a committee called Focus on the Future of Extension. The objective of that committee, the task was to cut $2.5 million off the budget because that's how short we were. I didn't understand the political system. I didn't understand how the system was fully organized and worked. Yes, I worked with the area specialists. Yes, I worked with the county educators. I had a wonderful relationship. I would spend an enormous amount of time working with them, teaming with them to provide skills and knowledge to our stakeholders. I didn't understand the political system. I thought, being task-oriented, that the administrators really wanted us to come up with a way to cut $2.5 million from the budget. And I did. But it was, and I presented it. And let's just say that it went over like a lead weight. It created a turmoil within the system. And it was painful. And when you get into situations like that, you're going to make mistakes. Ernie Lobban, Farmers Home Administration, I don't even know what they're called now. I worked for them for a while back in my younger days, and he said, Kim, the only way you're not going to make a mistake is if you're not doing a job for me. In other words, the only way not to make a mistake is to do nothing. In my opinion, that's a mistake in itself. You're going to make mistakes, but you got to clean up the mistakes right now. And sometimes you have to change the way you do things because of your mistakes. But you've got to work diligently. You have to grovel a little bit. You have to ask people, what does it take for me to clean up this mess? You got to turn lemons into lemonade. What do farmers want when they ask you a question? I got a call here a while back. A producer said, wanted to know if he should sell his wheat. I asked him a few questions, and I did a quick calculation. He had over $676,000 worth of wheat to sell. Was he really wanting me to tell him when to sell that wheat, or if he should sell the wheat? I get these calls. Do I sell my wheat today or next week? Shall I store it? Should I graze out our harvest? There's all kinds of questions that we get. And what are they really asking us to do? Well, they're asking us to listen. They're asking us to ask them the right questions. What they really want to know is if you think what they're fixing to do or what they'd like to do are the odds in their favor that it will work. That farmer didn't want me to tell him whether or not to sell. I know I had one call and he asked about it, and I said, well, you can do this. Yeah. I said, okay, you can do this. And the fourth way I said he could market his grain or sell his grain, he said, I knew it. That's what I'm going to do. And I say, that's great. And he went away thinking I'm sharper than a tree full of owls, when all I did was help him decide what he wanted to do and confirm that the odds are it's going to work for him. No guarantee, but the odds are it's going to work. And that's what farmers really want from us. They want us to provide additional information, but they want us to help them make a decision that will probably work for them. Delivery methods, this I forget what this thing's called. It's called Commodium or something like that. Let me see. Camtasia to make this videotape, because this is the first one I've ever made. It's new, but I mean, this is new technology, and this is pretty neat. At least I hope it turns out neat. Southwest Farm Press, I've been writing an article in there since 1987. Every issue, 600 words. Doing a sun-up or TV programs, 2.5, 3-minute slot. Radio, news releases, meetings, workshops, social medias. You need to know how to use them all. It's amazing what you can teach twice a month, 600 words at a time, or every week, 2.5 to 3 minutes at a time. It's incredible. And, time is changing with this social media, with this Camtasia, different ways to do things. Two-way TV, working with Gary Strickland and driving. You can drive 3.5, 4 hours there and back and do a 30-minute meeting, or you can do two-way TV. You've got to look at every delivery method, but you've got to know which delivery methods your customers, your clientele, your stakeholders want you to use. Lastly, the value of entertaining. Now, I started out like I told you the story of the jokes and the cowboy stories. It went down like a lead balloon. Entertaining, I'm talking about being energetic. I'm talking about believing in what and having confidence in what you're saying. I'm talking about enjoying what you're doing and let them know you're enjoying it. They want somebody that's energetic, that believes in what they're doing, and that recognizes their value, their knowledge, their skills, and that together they can run a good operation. You've got decisions on, right there, your job for me at state versus national versus professional. In the mid to late 80s, the budget's kind of like it is now, is non-existent. And I spent my maintenance money running up and down the roads of Oklahoma, helping the county educators and the farmers and ranchers and agribusiness in the state of Oklahoma. I gave up some professional advancement because I spent my money in state. Now, is it important to go to professional meetings, regional, national? Yes, it is. You've got to network. I haven't talked about networking or not networking, but you need people that you can, when you have a problem or question, you can call and talk to. In other words, don't do it alone. Get someone to help you do it. And that's where you've got to figure about how much is local, how much is state, how much is professional. Chasing grants is the same way. Do the grants take away from your ability to work within the state? And with that, if I was there, I would throw it up for questions and comments. Throw it open for that. Since I'm not there, maybe you want to talk amongst yourselves, share mistakes and what you've learned from them, or maybe the moderator wants to visit with a little bit. If you want to visit with me, email's kim.anderson@okstate.edu. Phone number 405-744-9817. That's straight into my office. I'll answer the phone. If not, leave me a message and I will call you back. Be sure and talk slow and give me your phone number at least twice, because I don't have the memory I used to have. One last thing. When they ask for questions and there's not any questions, there's that pause, and then you end on a negative note. You always want to save one important point to present after the questions, because if questions are being asked, then the questions stop and there's a pause and you're done. Or the only good way is if they're asking so many questions, the moderator says, hey, well, Kim's going to be here, blah, 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 blah. But that didn't happen very often. I always save one point to present after the questions. And with that, I thank you for the time. Remember, I'm your tax dollars at work, and I'm here to help you.